Hello, and welcome to Saving People, Queering Things, the supernatural rewatch podcast where we talk about ghosts, road trips, and free will through every episode of the TV series Supernatural.
Today, we are exploring Season 3, Episode 3, Bad Day at Black Rock, through the theme of freedom. I'm Noah, one of your hosts, and with me today are my co-host Elayna and our special guest Alyssa. Alyssa, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Alyssa. I've been in the Supernatural fandom since 2012 when I rented the first season DVD.
Ooh,
That's right around the same time as me. I love that.
I'm talking Blockbuster days.
A local video store.
Okay.
Oh, that's even better.
Even better.
I decided I'd seen a couple episodes and I'd always wanted to watch the show, but I always forgot the time it was on. And summer 2012, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go and I'm going to rent season 1. Just start from the beginning and see if I like the show or not. And I got hooked.
Clearly, you're here now.
I was going to say, how's that going for you a decade later?
And I'm Fallen Angel and Pie on TikTok and on AO3.
Oh, that's excellent username. I love that.
If you've got the same username across both of those accounts, you've already proved you're a fan. You're good.
I had a Tumblr and that was my Tumblr because I figured, Dean's 2 favorite things.
Oh, that gives me feelings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. It's so awesome to have you on.
Fantastic to have you. You excited? Nervous?
Excited and nervous. I've never done a podcast before, so.
Oh, well, it's so much fun. Well, we're glad to be your introduction to the podcasting world.
Hell yeah. Now we can move into our series recap. Every week we do a little 30-second recap of the season so far and then 30 seconds of the episode itself. Today we're going to have Elayna do our season recap. Elayna, are you prepared?
Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
Okie dokie. I'm going to set a little timer right here. I'll count you in.
Okay.
3,
I'm ready.
2, 1. Go.
So we're early in the season still. This is episode 3. So far, we have had a run-in with the 7 deadly sins in the first episode, and the episode prior to this, we deal with some changelings and a person from Dean's past, and it's just been really weird ever since the Hell's Gate opened at the end of season 2, and so they're just trying to figure out like where all these demons are, how are they going to cram them back into a box, and do that without Dean having to die, because we don't want Dean to die. We love him very much, and that is my time is up.
Ooh, nicely done. Nicely done. It's a little easier to do the season recaps on the earlier episodes.
Yeah, when there's 3 episodes, I was like, I've done early, but I feel bad that you had to do the season 2 recap because you were like, hi, here's the whole 20 some episodes.
Oh yeah, that was a lot, but easy to manage. Alyssa, are you ready to do our 30-second episode recap?
Yes, I have the timer ready.
Got the timer all right. Perfect. Love it. 3, 2, 1. Take it away.
All right, so this episode, Bad Day at Black Rock, Sam and Dean get a call on one of John's old cell phones, and they go to his old storage locker, and they go through it, and they talk to Bobby, and they're on the lookout for a rabbit's foot, and then they find the rabbit's foot. Sam that has all the luck and then loses it, and I'm out of time.
That was great, though.
That's great. You did so good.
I forgot the word for storage locker. I was going to say warehouse. I'm like, it's not warehouse.
I mean, it's an acceptable answer.
Yeah, warehouse would have been reasonable.
Yeah.
That's a great summary, though.
You did great. You got what you needed to get out, really.
Yeah.
Sam had the luck, but lost it.
Now that we know where we're at in the season and where we are at with this episode, that brings us to our main discussion. And this week, we're going to be talking about the show through the theme of freedom. So I'm really curious how we can tie freedom into this episode.
It's honestly such an interesting theme to watch the show through, because a lot of the boys' actions and choices are shaped by the lack of freedom they experienced through their childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's displayed in this episode with the items in John's locker.
Yeah, it's interesting because we explore a lot of episodes in relation to free will. That's kind of what we end every season with a discussion about. But with this episode, because they're sort of being manipulated by the magic of this rabbit's foot, it's like nobody really has a say in what's going to happen to them. It's kind of the strings are being pulled by, they mention destiny, and Dean's like, no, it's not destiny, it's just a rabbit's foot. but it's out of their hands this episode, which makes freedom an interesting lens to look at it through.
So very interesting.
Yeah, and the difference between the freedoms that Dean has versus the freedoms that Sam has had.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you had a really good note about that. If you wanted to mention that now, that would actually be really
yeah. So when the boys are going through John's storage locker and they're picking up things from the childhood, Sam picks up the soccer trophy from when he was 12, and he says, "Oh, my first soccer trophy from when I was 12." And in contrast to Dean, when he finds something from his childhood, he picks it up and says, "Oh, my first sawed off, made in the 6th grade."
And he says it so affectionately that it just kind of breaks my heart a little.
Yeah, but you realize 6th grade, you're about 12, especially since he's born in January. So they're both 12 at the same moments, and yet Sam had the freedom, at least a little bit of freedom, to be a regular kid for a moment, whereas Dean never did. But Sam got that freedom because of Dean.
I would point out that Sam got that freedom, and Dean's first reaction is probably the closest you were to being a boy, which is two things. It's a little bit of a dig on him for being feminine, which, yeah, okay, 2006. Get fucked.
Yeah, it's not the very first or the last unfortunate time that we will have them make a comment that's totally off color.
Definitely not. But it also kind of works as showing that Sam had the freedom to go play softball, but it's only because that's something that John was a fan of, that he wanted his sons to enjoy. If it had been ballet class or anything more effeminate, John probably wouldn't have let him do that.
Yeah, but he was like, soccer team, that's totally a thing that my son can do.
Yeah, so it's like freedom limited.
And it's something I didn't realize this till you were just talking, but it's also kind of interesting that Dean chooses to make that comment. It's almost kind of a defense mechanism, because he's trying to be like, oh, well, yeah, he probably kept your trophy because, you were girly or whatever. This was the closest to being a boy, because you can tell there's like that tiny twinge of jealousy that Sam got the chance to have that freedom as a child and he didn't. And so he's like, oh, well, what am I going to cover this with? Let me use humor as a coping mechanism like I always do.
Gotta justify it somehow.
Yeah.
I also think it's important to note that Dean picks up the trophy and then Sam recognizes it. So Dean picks it up hoping it's something that he did, something that his dad was proud of at one point, or hoping that it's completely unrelated to either of them.
Yeah.
Because if it was something that he kept of Sammy's that held Sammy higher than Dean, that's going to hurt either way. But Sam knows it.
Yeah, but the way he reacts to that shotgun every time, because he's so like tender about it. I'm like,
oh my God, honestly.
Oh, honey, this is not a thing you should be excited to find, because you should have never had to make it in the first place.
The amount of dust that comes off of it, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too, just the fact that John kept this from them, the fact that like he's got all of these different magical objects and items and he never told his sons about it, just seems really strange to me, because
especially Dean.
Yeah, because you'd think that he would have involved his sons in something that was related to hunting. It's not like this is, oh, I'm not going to tell them about my book club that I was part of on weekends, because that would be unrelated. He's keeping something that would have been helpful to them as hunters from them. And I've never been really sure of the motivations behind that.
It's a little weird about the timing that he sets up this storage locker, because before the show starts, Dean is with John. Sam's off on his own for 2 years, right?
Yeah, so it leaves you to wonder when he actually got this storage locker and how long it's been there. From the dust, I would imagine that it's been longer than when he passed away, which would have been what? I think it would have been a year prior to this. So he probably hadn't been there in a long time.
Yeah, he probably got it. Well, the boys were probably at least teenagers, if not earlier, but just never told them about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, Alyssa, that's a really good note you have about the scratch tickets.
Oh, yeah. No, something that I've noticed, and it seems to kind of be a little mini theme throughout the series, is scratch tickets. And we know, especially in this, immediately Sam has luck. He has the little rabbit's foot. He has all this luck. And the first thing Dean does is he goes out and gets scratch tickets to have Sam scratch, and they're all winners, obviously. And every time I watch it, I always think about how to get money, they run credit card schemes, they hustle pool, And scratch tickets is an easy way to get money, but it's also a legal way to get money.
Legal
Exactly.
and pretty untraceable.
Yeah, it's untraceable, but it's legal. And if they get all of this money, then they have money that they can legally use. They don't have to use the stolen credit cards for a while.
Yeah.
They don't have to get traced. They don't have to hustle at pool, possibly lose. I'm sure they did lose at some point when they were learning how to play pool, but that losing has to be on their heads. So the scratch tickets kind of represents financial freedom, at least in Dean's mind, whereas Sam thinks it's ridiculous, but Dean's all scratch tickets.
Dean's focused on the goal, which is to keep going, to be able to survive, to hunt the next monster. Whereas Sam is focused on the monster and how painful it is right now and how it could be dangerous. Dean's making long-term plans. He's like, hey, maybe I can set Sam up with some good stuff for after I'm gone.
Yeah, especially because he knows that he's on borrowed time at this point. Just knowing that, he could get these possibly thousands and thousands of dollars to make sure that Sam is okay when he's not there anymore is just kind of a heartbreaking realization.
And to live it up a little bit before he himself goes, Yeah,
I'm sure he wants to go to Vegas.
You can go to Vegas and party it up, but not if you're a broke hunter.
Yeah. No, broke hunters, it's a little hard to hustle at slot machine.
It's hard to hustle up some Vegas money.
Yeah.
For sure. I love it though.
So Noah, I know that you in past episodes have been really excited by Sterling K. Brown.
Love Sterling K. Brown.
So I was curious how you felt about him returning this episode, and given the fact that we're seeing him in jail, but our lens that we're talking about is freedom, that just seemed like a
ironic
nice dichotomy to talk about.
Yeah, honestly, I was so excited that Gordon came back because I knew coming into this that episode 3 is the one Gordon comes back on. I was like, hell yeah, let's see some Gordon. And then he was in it for 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, this barely counts as Sterling K. Brown. So I'm hoping, it builds up to him getting out. And the next episode is tragically his last episode in the series. So I'm hoping he doesn't.
Yeah, that's a few away too, I think.
Yeah, so we've got some time. But it was super interesting to see freedom and how he's living outside of the bars through these other guys that he works with. Don't recall their names.
I think it was Creedy and Kubrick.
Creedy.
Kubrick is the Jesus one.
Yeah.
The Jesus one.
That's one of my favorite lines when he's just like, "Don't play with my Jesus."
Don't play with my Jesus. Like, okay. Hey, his eyes are following me. It's not my fault.
Yeah. It's also kind of cool to have this character in an episode where we're talking about freedom who is completely convinced that this is divine intervention that's helping him out when it's absolutely not. It's literally just hunter magic.
Yeah.
But believing that frees him from the guilt of these decisions, these bad choices he's making. As long as he believes it's divine intervention, it's not my fault. I'm innocent. I'm free. I'm just doing what the Lord told me to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a twisted version of freedom.
Poetry snaps to that.
Another, if we're talking about Sterling K. Brown, another recurring star who makes her debut in this episode is Miss Lauren Cohan, the queen.
Yes, Bela.
Silver screen as Bela.
Round of applause.
Love her. Oh my God. Yes, she's so good. And she kills it in this episode. Does a great job of being confident and casual at the same time.
Bela is such a fun character this season. Like, she's one of my favorites that gets introduced in season 3.
Yeah, and she's a really good foil for Dean. Like they're similar characters, but they took completely different paths.
Yeah. And talking about when you were mentioning financial freedom, she's someone who absolutely has that because she uses all of these magical objects to just make herself have that freedom. She gives that to herself by all of the items that she procures and sells.
Yeah.
Like a badass.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's a really amazing character.
It's so interesting to see a character who's adjacent to the hunter lifestyle.
Exactly.
Is a part of it, but just uses it to profit, isn't invested emotionally.
And Dean even calls her out on that. He's like, you find out that there's all these dark things out there and this is what you do with it.
Yeah. But then what's the line she says? We're all going to hell. Might as well live it up a little on the way there.
Yeah.
Or might as well make it worth it. Something like that. And Dean's like, well, I agree with you there. Fair enough. But
yeah, she has a lot of feelings about her own personal freedom, and she's trying to hold on to that at any cost, even if it means having to do some rather shady and sketchy things.
Yeah.
Bella's a good time.
I was very impressed. I liked her character. Can't wait to see more. whenever she leaves, and Dean says, "Don't go away angry. Just go away." Beautiful, beautiful.
Oh, and in relation to that, that's one of my favorite moments of something that was improv on this show, was that son of a bitch that Dean screams. And because if you're watching the episode and you look at Sam, you can see that Jared cracks a little bit and is like about to start laughing. And that's because that was an actual take where, Dean, just the way he bursts out, son of a bitch, was like entirely a Jensen call. And I think that it was the right one.
Love that.
That was an example of Dean taking over the vessel of Jensen.
Yeah, exactly. I think Jensen gets possessed by Dean sometimes, and that was a beautiful example of that.
Yeah.
This episode was honestly so funny.
Yeah, the humor in it is so great.
It's the way that they react to all this magical stuff happening, and they're like, Sam just caught the gun from across the room, and he's like, what?
And then the classic "I'm Batman" line when he throws the pen into the gun.
Okay, but him saying "I'm Batman" and then Jensen Ackles years later getting to play Batman.
Listen, that's the power of manifestation, okay?
Such power. What a king. So proud of him.
As Sam said, yeah, you're Batman.
Well, just also in all of those, the way the camera moves so quickly to show the pen going into the gun, or the bullet shooting off of this and hitting that.
It's so cheesy.
So cheesy.
It's cheesy, but it's also very well done.
It's so well done.
Yeah.
They really the production department hammed it up for this episode.
They said, we're going to make it so cheesy that we know it's cheesy, but then we're going to have all the characters act like, what the fuck just happened? So then it comes back around, and so it's funny again.
Well, and that's like when Sam looks at the heater and it's just like, oh, come on. Like, I'm just sitting here. I didn't do anything.
Or Dean telling him, don't even scratch your nose.
And then he immediately just like wiggles his nose.
So good. And it works. It's cheesy, but it works.
And this episode is the home to the iconic line, I think I lost my shoe. Or just, I lost my shoe.
Yep, I had that written down. I lost my shoe. With the iconic defeated Jared, just completely hopeless in that moment.
There's been a few times at cons that Jared has done that line in panel, and he still will say it exactly the way on the show.
I love that. Love that.
Yeah, I actually one time when I was at I think it was GeekyCon 2015, I want to say.
Flex.
But it was a, just fandom convention. And there was this person who was cosplaying as Sam, and she literally had the whole Sam outfit, but she was only walking around with one shoe.
Of course.
I walked up to her and was like, I see what you're doing, and I appreciate it, and I want you to know.
I love that.
Well, it's like every time I see a random shoe, which sounds like I see random shoes all the time, but if I do see a random shoe on the street, if it happens to be the left shoe, that's the sound that's playing in my head.
I lost my shoe. It's the most defeated Sam Winchester ever sounds.
Honestly, that tracks.
And also, like when they go to Bigger Sins and they win the track, and Dean's face is that big cheesy happy grin, like, I get free food.
He's loving it.
I'm just like, oh god, no.
Sam is just squeezing his face as far back as, oh my god, no, pictures. But Dean is loving it up. Loving it.
Any way in which Dean Winchester can get free food is a good way.
Yeah.
Amen.
We're with him there.
I did think it was interesting that in the end, the way they saved the day was by taking away Bella's freedom too.
That's a good point.
That's like kind of what the rabbit's foot does, is that it gives you the freedom to make ridiculous decisions while you have it, but as soon as you lose it, your freedoms are taken away because you can't do anything. Sam is even if he's just sitting in a chair, it still goes wrong and it's going to kill him. So it takes away all of his freedom as soon as you lose it. So the way they save the day is they toss it to Bella. They have her enter the curse, and that's what ends up making her decided, okay, yeah, fine, I'll toss it. But
And Dean's taking a big risk by doing that because he's losing the luck himself. And so he's just hoping that he's going to do this and she's going to make the right decision. And thankfully she does. But it's, when you think about it, she could have easily just run off with it and done something else with it. But she recognized like, oh, I don't want to be screwed here. So
it's either going to be a lifelong commitment to me to keep track of this and make sure I never lose it, or I can just cut my losses here.
Which, and like as Bobby says, everyone loses it.
Yeah.
So Bella would have still lost it.
At some point.
At some point she would have lost it. So
it's not worth it at that point.
Yeah.
She's not that invested in the supernatural life.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
But then she gets revenge in some ways, taking away
the tickets.
Dean and Sam's freedom because she steals the tickets, and that's when we get the son of a bitch.
Yeah, the financial freedom, she takes that back from them.
Yeah, so then they don't have that. So
it's a lot of trade-offs of freedom that are occurring between characters this episode.
Yeah,
interesting aspect of the show. Did you guys have any more notes on freedom and how it impacted today's episode?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Everything else I had that I wanted to talk about fits into going meta.
Now's as good a time as any to move into our going meta section, where we are tracking lore, the Bechdel test, pop culture, and more. Let's get started.
Yeah, so we have first up our Bechdel test, which we discuss each episode. Did we pass it this week?
Let's see. We had Bela, a named female character, did not interact with any other female character in the slightest.
We fail again.
Nope.
I do like that this episode does introduce Bela, though, because she becomes a pretty prominent character this season. So, they get like a quarter of a point for introducing her, but they lose that back by not having her interact with any other women in the show.
Yeah.
They make her a strong, independent woman, but that's all they do.
Yeah, they sort of stop there. They make her like fit that trope, but don't actually have her interact with anybody else. And so that kind of like, it's the one element in which she ends up falling a little bit flat, but she's such a fun character. Because you made the really good point of saying she's a foil to Dean, which when we get foils in this show, they tend to be really interesting characters. But unfortunately does not pass the absolute lowest bar possible of the Bechdel test.
Ugh, come on, do better.
Yeah, one of these days.
So get this. I was looking into the lore for this episode, right? And this episode actually introduces curse boxes, which pop up in the future multiple times.
Yeah.
John's storage locker, which I imagine comes back.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff in there. And now they know.
I think the first time we get another mention of it is in season 5. And it's a really important mention.
Okay. Good. So
it's also the episode where we meet Bela.
Yep, Bela, Lauren Cohan, Queen. Pretty sure she doesn't appear past season 3.
No, unfortunately. I wasn't sure if you knew that fact about her.
I checked her IMDb status. I didn't check. I don't check anybody's. I don't look at the Supernatural wikis because I don't want to spoil a bunch. But
that's fair.
I do check their IMDb history and it shows me which episodes they're in. And I'm like, ooh, okay. So I know they'll be here for some period of time. Not forever.
But it's fun to watch her arc. I can tell you that much.
Good.
And your boy's back.
My boy's back. Gordon, he's back for a little bit. He's still in prison, but it's established that he's been in there for a while. At this point, it's probably been like 8 months, a year, maybe. And then he'll be out in the future. He says, we're working on getting me out of here. Perfect. Good lore check on him. Establishes he's getting out soon.
Yeah. The one last thing I had for lore check that I put in here, which I had never thought to look it up until today when I was watching the episode. But when they get the call to John's phone about the storage locker, they make a mention of the name that is the storage locker is registered under, which is Edgar Casey. And when I looked up, I was curious. I was like, who is this? Is this, these are characters that typically will use pop culture references and band names and things like that. So I was like, who is this guy? Turns out Edgar Casey was actually a clairvoyant and a faith healer from like the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Ooh.
And he died in 1945, I think. So I just thought that was a really interesting tidbit. And it was like a nice reminder that a lot of times the show writers will pick random bits of lore from real life to incorporate into the show.
I do really like that.
Yeah.
I was raised in a very Christian conservative household. So I know a significant amount about the Bible and the stories it contains thereof.
Mhm.
So it is really interesting to see parts of that show up in Supernatural, parts that I learned about as a kid. And I'll be like, oh, hey, yeah, I know how that goes. Okay. Interesting. Love that take on it. It's very unique.
Wait until you get to seasons 4 and 5 because the biblical references begin to abound once we get there.
We've barely gotten a hint of Gabriel so far. Barely.
Oh yeah, and Gabriel is. Oh, we'll get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
And they don't even know he's Gabriel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They just know him as that trickster guy that they think is dead.
Yeah, his reveal and his arc over the course of the whole show is a personal favorite of mine.
I'm there for it. Anything else as far as lore for this episode?
I think that was all I had.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else to add.
So now we have our pop culture segment, which we have a couple of fun little references this episode. We have the iconic "I'm Batman" line.
I'm Batman. Beautiful, beautifully executed. He's loving it, getting to say that, because it's the most he's ever felt like Batman. I mean, if I could throw a pen from across the room into the nozzle of a gun, yeah, I'd feel like Batman. Absolutely.
And then knock a guy out with a remote control.
Easy. Done.
Yeah, and Jensen has always loved Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's such a dork for it.
Yeah.
You could tell he's very excited to use that reference too.
And it's foreshadowing for 15 years in the future.
Exactly. He said, you know what? If I play my cards right, I could probably be the Batman for the Long Halloween animated movie. Go check it out. It's on HBO Max now. It's beautiful on both parts. Okay. But
this episode was not sponsored by HBO Max.
But HBO Max, come at me. I'll sponsor you. I love your stuff.
We also, for pop culture, have a nice little nugget of a reference for Bela because she uses the code name Lugosi when she's trying to buy the cursed object box, which if any of you are, big fans of horror films will recognize that Bela Lugosi is responsible for playing one of the most iconic versions of Dracula in cinema history.
Iconic. That's the most Dracula, like when you picture Dracula.
It's the Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a little bit of Batman, a little bit of Dracula. It's good times this episode.
Yeah.
Did y'all notice any other pop culture references?
Well, the only thing I could think of is every time when they answer John's cell phone, I always do I always smile a little bit because my very first cell phone was that particular model of Motorola flip phone.
That's great.
Absolutely love that fact.
Which also Bobby has the same brand of cell phone as well.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah, there's an episode you see his phone in the early seasons and it's the same brand. So I always a little happy dance going, hee.
I wonder if they bought them together.
That's wonderful.
So
hell yeah.
I love it when we have like personal connections to the pop culture of the show.
Honestly,
yeah.
It makes it all come full circle.
Yeah.
So moving into our final section, we've got Gaydar, our sexuality, gender, and relationship dynamics in the episode. What did you guys notice as far as Gaydar?
We don't really have a lot this episode. It's kind of more focused on the plot and the humorous elements.
They had a lot to work with.
Yeah, they have a lot of other things that are going on that they're dealing with in the plot. But the one that I did note, which I think we kind of already mentioned it earlier, was just the, probably closest you ever got to being a boy. It's a little bit of that toxic masculinity in there.
Yeah. So anti-Gaydar.
Yeah.
Well, and also later on after that, he tells Sam that if he was ever going to get lucky, he could get lucky with the waitress. It turns out to be Bela that just stole the very heterosexual vibe. Yeah.
That's true. Very, very heterosexual vibe.
Yeah. Very heteronormative vibes.
And then later on, she's very flirty with Dean, and he's very flirty with her too.
Yeah. We're getting a very cis heteronormative vibe from this episode.
Yeah. Disappointing.
And that brings us to our episode mixtape, in which we all decide on a song that we feel embodies either a character or a plot element, or even just the vibes of an episode. So would you guys like to share your episode mixtape contributions for Bad Day at Black Rock?
Absolutely. I couldn't pick one based off of the theme of this episode, but I just went with one that fits the vibe of the kind of carefree rabbit's foot vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Ditto by Aries was the song I picked. It's fantastic. Just kind of has a good rhythm to it that just makes you feel like relaxing. I'm there for it.
Nice.
I went with Get Lucky by Daft Punk. Game of Luck, and it's a very catchy song. And whenever I hear it, I also think of my very first Supernatural convention in 2013 when I only went just for the Saturday just to meet Misha.
Oh,
Sebastian Roche, or Roche, however you pronounce his last name. He was there, and his panel was absolutely chaotic, and he only answered maybe 2 questions, and at one point he had the sound guys play Get Lucky, and he had everyone stand up while he climbed over chairs. Just went over the entire room. So whenever I hear that song, I think of Sebastian Roche, and it's about luck, so it fits with this episode.
I love it. It fits
that's
perfect.
such a brilliant connection. I love that. I went with a similar thing to Noah in that I chose it based sheerly on vibes and what's a song that to me sounds like the same energy of this episode. And in perusing my playlist, I came up with Thelma and Louise by Bastille. It's a very upbeat, very jaunty, catchy song. And it just, to me, embodies similar energy to the weirdness that is this episode.
The brothers with the rabbit's foot is totally the Thelma and Louise that Bastille are singing about.
Totally.
Beautiful song.
It's canon. I declare it.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Alyssa, did you want to introduce our blessings for the week?
Okay, so blessings. So who do we want to bless this week? I'm going to go with Bobby for being on the phone and telling the boys the lore about the rabbit's foot and just putting up with them.
He does that a lot. Very
Yeah.
well.
Herculean feat that he takes on way too frequently.
Yeah, just I'm surprised, honestly, that he didn't have more gray hair because he has to deal with those 2 idjits a
Oh,
lot.
that's one thing I don't think we touched on. Is this the first time that Bobby says idjits?
Is it? It's the first idjit?
I think it is.
Is it?
Oh, that's sacred. I love that.
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't even notice.
because he says that right at the end, and I was like,
He does.
I don't think he said that before.
First instance of idjit. I love that.
But yes, beautiful blessing for Bobby. Love it. He deals with them so well in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Elayna, did you want to bless anyone this week? Who felt the most in need?
Yeah, so I actually, in looking at this, realized I want to bless someone slightly different than what I wrote down. I would like to say a blessing for Sam's shoe, his poor lost shoe, forlorn in the sewers of whatever town they were in. I wish that shoe peace and hope that it finds its own family now that it has been lost from its brother.
Hope it finds a place.
Some sewer rat has found it and does a bed.
Love that.
Yeah, we're all about found family in this fandom, so I'm hoping that that there was peace when the shoe was done is what I would hope.
I love that.
What about you, Noah?
I think Dean needed the most blessing. Well, maybe not the most, but I really appreciate how Dean interacted with the rabbit's foot this episode. He wanted to make the most of it and live it up and be really cool. Not make the most of it and take advantage of other people like Bela did, but I just want to look really cool and be badass and save my brother. That's why I grabbed it. But
Yeah.
I really liked that and I resonate with that. And I think he deserves to find his own way to do that.
Oh.
Be badass on his own without help from the rabbit's foot.
I love that. Blessings for Dean.
Yeah.
Honestly. Seems like every episode we bless Dean. Damn.
You know what? The boy is on, his final days this season, so he's going to need a lot of blessing if he's going to get out of hell alive, which is a slight contradiction of language, but it's fine.
Hey, if it works, it works. Okay, well, I think that's about everything I've got written down for this episode. Alyssa, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. This was a pleasure, honestly.
Thank you. And can you tell us where people can find you on the internet?
I'm Fallen Angel and Pie on TikTok. I'm on Twitter at Abnossum Alyssa, ABNSOMEALYSSA. It's a Gish thing.
Okay.
And it's the same Instagram handle, Abnossum.
We'll link that in the description for everybody.
Yeah.
I'll get you the actual.
Nice.
Perfect. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blast.
Loved having you.
Yeah, it was fun. My podcast virginity.
Not that hard, right? Just chatting.
Yeah, that was fun.
So glad to have you. And that is all for today's episode. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure that you are subscribed to Saving People Queering Things wherever you get your podcasts. We would love to hear from you. So if you've got a blessing you'd like to give a character or a theme you'd love us to see explore, you can leave us a voicemail at queeringthingspodcast.com.
You can also follow us on TikTok, where we're at Queering Things Pod, and on Twitter and Instagram at queering_things. You can also chat with our hosts and fellow listeners on our Discord server. Links to all of that will be down below in the show notes and on our website. Be sure to ride along with us next week as we explore Season 3, Episode 4, Sin City, through the theme of shame. Love the co-host for that one. It's going to be great.
It's going to be good. So thank you all for coming along for the ride, and we wish you a peaceful road until we meet again.